Welcome back, everybody, to You Can't Win. Tom here, joined by Donald as usual, and today on episode 14 we're going to be talking about Marxism and what our current relationship is like with the grand old theory of Marxism. So maybe we can get started, Donald, with going over our histories with Marxism and how we've evolved in terms of our thinking along those lines and where we are now.
Sure. I guess, yeah, I could start with just for most of my sort of like growing up until I was in my mid-20s or something like that. Like it just seemed almost like a nonsense theory kind of thing. Like it didn't really relate to what I was thinking as much because I just mostly associated it with sort of like dictatorships and stuff like that. Like I really didn't know anything why it would be important at all or anything like that. And in university at the start, I started to kind of like learn a bit about it, but it was through like kind of total disdain. Like I was right wing at the time, and I just kind of thought I was polite and I thought it was interesting, but it just didn't seem. It seemed almost like kind of funny that I was learning about it because I was right wing. So it was kind of like, haha, this is kind of silly stuff that I'm learning about.
You were taking classes that were like painting it in a positive way, or sort of just like an objective, like this is what the theories are. Or? Yeah,
some of them were positive, like some of them were with socialists that were teaching it as if it was fact kind of thing. You know, it wasn't just just totally negative. And it really wasn't until I went to China and then came back that I was kind of like all in on it kind of thing. Like like pretty soon after that, I was like searching around for sort of like how to explain things like the Iraq War and all that kind of stuff. So I had been listening to a lot more of like Noam Chomsky and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, once they put the chip in your brain, I guess.
yeah, pretty much. And then that kind of I started kind of trying to read as much as possible about those kind of things for about a year or two, and then from there I just kind of for a few years at least, I was kind of like all in on that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
How old were you at that time?
So in 2005 to 2006, 2006, I was 25. So.
Okay. So I actually got into it a little bit at a younger age, later year, but at a younger age.
Sure.
I sort of, I guess, growing up, I don't think I ever thought about Marxism until, I don't know.
Yeah.
I never really thought about it. Like, I didn't think about politics in general growing up very much, at least in terms of like theory and like, who's right and wrong or whatever.
Yeah.
But I did started to get into it after I dropped out of college. So I'm not sure exactly what sparked my interest in it. I know that it definitely part of it was that it was something that seemed interesting, like because I hadn't thought about it when I was younger, that it was unexplored territory, and that was something that just was interesting. I was curious about it, and now I can't quite remember what exactly brought me to get an interest in Marxism as such. I think I sort of just followed my instincts in terms of like, okay, well, there's this thing called the left, there's this thing called the right, and the left seems to be about revolution and disdain of like the status quo in terms of the political status quo, and the right seems to be like about preserving order. And at that time I wasn't religious at all, so like, they had a lot of their arguments just kind of fell on deaf ears for me, like,
Sure.
So I guess that's what kind of got me interested in it.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think that's actually why I started getting interested in right wing stuff actually early on, like in my late teens, early 20s and stuff. It was almost the opposite, is that I saw sort of the left wing kind of stuff as being tried and failed. So it was almost as if like, that was already done. So the kind of stuff that interested me right away was sort of like using the market to solve social problems. I mean, it's just total mainstream, well, to the right of the mainstream kind of like ideology, But
Yeah.
it made complete sense to me at the time. I was like, oh yeah, no, the way that you
Right.
solve all these problems is just by getting rid of the government from all these programs, because they're screwing everything up. And then once that's out of the way, then people will just be able to buy whatever they need or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it was only through like kind of breaking that model in my head, kind of being like, okay, taking it to extremes, and then being like, oh yeah, like, you know, the kind of internet debates, like you can't privatize all the roads, you can't, all those kind of things, especially because at the time I didn't know. I mean, like a lot of these debates happened to me online, and I feel like it was still early days for that kind of stuff even being debated online a lot, like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like early 2000s and stuff. I'm sure it happened on like Usenet or something like that before, but you know what I mean? Like these kind of like, you know, just kind of like all these debates about like sort of like the intricate kind of libertarian kind of nonsense that kind of gets debated back and forth. Like it felt like completely new to me at the time, like completely interesting. And then yeah, once I kind of broke that apart, I had to just become like a moderate conservative, and pretty quickly once I realized that was pretty, I don't know. I think the main thing that really bothered me about the conservatives was just kind of how like straightforward, like hypocritical everything is, kind of thing.
Right.
So it
Yeah.
wasn't even that like I disagree with the conservatives as much as I was just like, oh, none of these people actually care about this kind of stuff most of the time. So that was kind of a strange kind of thing. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess that's sort of how I always felt about that stuff. It was like
Yeah,
that all these people are just crooks. Like why would you care about what the crooks think or care or pretend to think? You know what I
yeah,
mean? But yeah, so I remember reading Marx. I read Capital somehow. Like I read Volume 1,
yeah,
and I remember I found these little books that were like Marx for Beginners or ABCs of Marx or something like that. It was like something that was published in the 70s, and there was like one for Lenin and one for Mao, and it was sort of done almost in like a children's book style thing.
yeah, yeah. I know what
Do
you
you know
mean.
what I'm talking about? The
Is it
series of
is it
books?
is it the, like the cartoon ones?
Yeah, yeah, they're done with
Yeah,
cartoons.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, those were fun.
yeah.
Those didn't really like get me into it or anything. I actually found those after I sort of had read a little bit, but
Sure.
I do remember reading those.
I read a bunch of those too. Yeah, I said this before, but I find it easier to read like just a shorter book for some reason, just like because of like OCD kind of reasons, whatever. But um, so a lot of the books, I burn through a lot of books that are like 150 pages long, kind of thing,
Hmm.
and then I kind of like accumulate these longer books, and I'm like, I'm gonna get to these eventually. I guess that's pretty common, but you know what I mean? Like it's just funny that like I don't know. I just so anyways, so if you look through all the books that I've read about Marxism and stuff on my Goodreads or something like that, it just like it's almost like a list of books that are like 120 pages long, kind of. So it's kind of funny, but yeah. Anyways, go on.
Yeah, and I think pretty quickly I started talking about this stuff online
Yeah,
because I was sort of already, online talking about things. So as soon as I kind of picked up this interest, it was like, oh, let me talk about this with people online. It'll kind of help me understand it and sort of like flesh out the way I think about it. So, do you recall if you ever had a moment where like the different kinds of leftism, like Trotskyism, Stalinism, or Marxism, Leninism, or whatever, like Maoism. Do you remember exactly what your trajectory was in the early days through
yeah,
those things?
yeah. I do. I mean, I just as you said that, I kind of remembered the trajectory a bit. Like the first books that I read about Marxism were sort of like Frankfurt School, like Eric Fromm and stuff like that were kind of like Freudo-Marxist kind of stuff, that were kind of like just kind of books about fascism and the mentality of like trying to escape from freedom and kind of like submit to fascist rule and stuff, which seemed to me kind of like um, I don't know, like I feel like I've kind of gone like quite differently from that kind of, like those are those books I just don't think about as much anymore. But like
Mm-hmm.
the posters, Quind and McCain and stuff would recommend a lot of books to me and stuff, so I would just read some of those things, like George Lukács is like History and Class Consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
and some of those kind of books that are sort of like the Western Marxist kind of standard ones. And then they kind of started getting into sort of like autonomist kind of Marxist kind of stuff, like Harry Cleaver's book about capital and some of those things. So I started reading about those kind of things too. Then both of them kind of went into different directions, and we just kind of all stopped kind of talking. Like we just just ended up moving on to different things and stuff. And I got really into Maoist stuff after that. So I started
Okay.
reading a lot of like old issues of the Maoist internationalist movements,
Yeah.
stuff like that, those things. And they were just so crazy to me that like I love them. And like
Yeah.
listening to like Bob Avakian's talks and those kind of things. And yeah, that was probably like the closest I came to like being a true believer of that kind of stuff was around that period, which is like 2007, 2008.
Yeah. And that's right around when I started to get into it, I think.
Yeah. And so yeah, that was yeah, and then since then I kind of bounced around, whatever. And yeah, and then for a few years I was a member of a group that's like more kind of like post Trotskyist kind of thing, and I never really bought into the Trotsky side of it, but it was really helpful in terms of it was almost like designed to help me specifically because it was like a group of the meetings would usually be about 12 professors or something like that, and then me or something like that, and then or close to that, and then it was just so helpful for me to talk through things, give little talks, give little discussions about different things, and just hear get feedback immediately from this group of people. So it's kind of funny because it was oriented like in theory towards radical activism, but it ended up being almost like an education session for me for a few years. So that really helped too. And then but I also felt as that kind of went on, I more and more I kind of faded as I don't know. It stayed important, but it became kind of like you kind of see how people use these tools the same way for their whole lives, kind of thing, and you're kind of like, there's more to the world than that kind of thing. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like it just
Hmm.
feels kind of like I don't know. It's kind of like when you encounter people online who invest a lot of their personality into something like they make their avatar Trotsky or something like that, and they kind of what I mean. They're kind of debating every day about 1917 and all that.
Yeah. That kind of stuff reminds me of like teenagers who are like super
Yeah,
fans of like a band or something.
yeah,
And, that's when kids do it, it's whatever. When, you know, when you're like in your 20s, I feel like you should start developing your own personality,
yeah,
and not just sort of filling it up with like whatever particular aesthetic or whatever you can find that you like. Um, yeah, I never got involved in any group.
yeah,
That always seemed very far from what I was actually interested in. I think this kind of stuff was always for me like a way of trying to make sense of the world and understand like why things work the way they do, why politics is such a sham. I think that was basically the big question for me
yeah,
throughout. And so even if I did say like believe in a particular theory at a given time, it didn't mean that I was interested in like joining a party or whatever because that just seemed ridiculous. Like in my circumstances, I don't know what I would contribute to something like that.
yeah,
I don't think there was any group that seemed like it was. I don't think they knew what I don't know. I don't think any of the parties or groups really know what they're doing.
yeah,
Uh, at least from the perspective that I had, where it was like, okay, if this is the theory that you need to apply, but none of these groups are really applying this theory that I have.
yeah,
Um, but it definitely helped me make sense of like why there's political corruption in the certain form that it takes, and why we get into wars, and like the way that economic inequality exists and all that kind of stuff. Like I think that all made a lot more sense than anything else that I had heard up to that point. And even I mean today I think that basically a lot of those things are true. You know?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I mean, we were kind of, when we say about people with the kind of like childish obsession with it right away, and then kind of, you kind of have to evolve after that. But a lot of the times when I see people making fun of those kind of things, they usually harken back to something that is even before that than
Yeah,
afterwards, kind
yeah.
of thing. You know?
It's almost like they're calling something childish when they're even more childish in a certain way,
Yeah,
like a boomer kind of mentality, like, oh well, you're a communist, those people killed hundreds and millions of people and they don't believe in freedom. It's like that kind of stuff.
yeah. I saw that. I mean, I read an article today that was sort of describing why like insurrection is a bad idea, and that's not a hard argument usually generally to make, but a lot of it was kind of just going on and on about. It was basically like invoking theory, really, that came before those kind of debates started developing in that, or at least like kind of like standpoints, like kind of like classical kind of reformist kind of parliamentary kind of debates. And it's funny to me that in that because a lot of the time it's so easy to kind of dismiss and say, oh, these Trotskyists and stuff are obsessed with 1917 and stuff, and then you see in detail how, yeah, like a lot of people end up becoming obsessed about like FDR, or they have these kind of like similar kind of mindsets, but it's just I don't know, like Keynes said something like perfectly intelligent people who think that they are critical or whatever are usually in the thrall of said some dead economist kind of thing or something like that. Like it's just kind of like, and yeah, I think that's so true. Like it doesn't just have to be people who are kind of like whole hog into something. It can also be people who are
Yeah,
like, oh, I'm above
like
all
us.
this, and then they end up kind of yeah. No, but that's the thing is that that's a good
Sure.
transition point too. Is that like what does come after Marxism then, or something like that for both of us is sort of like, I don't know, maybe more pieces to the puzzle or something like that. Like more respect for religious traditions and things like that.
I
So
think there was definitely a sort of like smooth continuum for me from my interest in Marxism for like there's two things there. One is like as an explanatory tool, and then the other is sort of like as a vehicle for improving the world. And um,
yeah,
it didn't happen super quickly, but I definitely started to see divergence there where I could kind of stand with Marxism in terms of explaining things, but I didn't see it as a real vehicle for improving the world because it just wasn't something that was actionable for me. B, it's not even like the failures of various socialist projects. That was never really an issue for me to kind of overcome in that regard. Like I think that you can
yeah,
kind of look at those critically and just say like, well, they tried this, they had some success, and they had some failures, and you just pick up from there and keep moving. Like that was never a real problem for me. But I just don't even think
yeah,
that that's a real possibility today, like in the same kind of way. Like I think it would really look radically different, like any kind of actual communist movement. But
yeah.
I think that I started to think about things in terms of why would I think that my ideology or my perspective would be like the idea that of historical materialism and all this kind of stuff. Why would I think that this is somehow objective? It's almost like Marxism taught me to critique Marxism in a way. Like the fact that okay,
Yeah,
I'm in certain material circumstances that gives me a certain perspective. It gives me a certain ideology, and that ideology has led me to believe in those particular ideas. So maybe there are other things that I should look at in terms of their results rather than in what the premises are that make sense. And then that's sort of what inadvertently allowed me to accept religious ideas. Because my
hmm,
my engagement with Islam was completely incidental at first. I wanted to get a job that would pay really well, and so I could make easy money. And this was not the best idea I've ever had in the world, but my idea was that I would become
Yeah.
a translator for like the army or something, because those guys make huge money, and I've always been good with languages, so I
Yeah.
figured that I could like learn Arabic, go to Iraq for like 2 years, save up some money, and then be pretty set. And this was when I was like working really crappy jobs. We've kind of talked about that on that previous episode about jobs and stuff, but I was just looking for a way out, and this like was the best thing I could come up with at the time. And that, in my in wanting to kind of learn about Arabic, I was like, okay, well, let me look into like Middle Eastern history and stuff. I've always been interested in history, and then that was kind of like a slippery slope into like looking into Islam itself. But yeah, just to bring it back to Marxism, I guess. Okay, so
Yeah.
yeah, so there was these two kind of things that I sort of considered Marxism useful for, and I guess today I think that one of the better ways of improving the world around you is just to like become a better person yourself. I'm not critical of social activism and that kind of stuff, but I tend to think that there's a really hard limit on those things, that you can push them to a certain extent, but as soon as it starts to actually seriously affect the big power structures and power interests and whatnot in the world, it's not going to really stand for long, and it'll get crushed pretty easily. Like I think that you're better off kind of spending your energy on things that aren't going to. I think people are a little bit quick to romanticize revolution and stuff, and what to me revolution really looks like is you living in a jungle as police squads like go around murdering your family and friends and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think it really. People always imagine revolution as like a success story and not something that's just like a grueling experience that probably will fail. I at least people in our
Yeah.
situations, we're pretty comfortable, relatively speaking. Like, I'm not at all poo-pooing people who
Yeah.
are in like really harsh scenarios when that's their decision. Like, that's a completely different set of circumstances. But just to kind of imagine like revolution as the solution to your student loans is a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that that's, what I was thinking about is that it's hard to kind of think in this kind of like long term, I don't know, like the trajectory of the revolution or something like that in this kind of way. More and more, I kind of think of it as, okay, if you want this certain outcome, like socialist society or something, then these are the components that you're going to have to do, like are going to be involved. This is what's going to be involved in the process. This is what's going to be involved in, just organizing the people to do it. And, but I feel like more and more disconnected from the
Yeah.
actual goal. Like I just kind of, it's almost like a
Mm-hmm.
mathematics problem in my head now, kind of thing. It's like kind of like, it's like, okay, if, and I sympathize with the goal, but it's not like, it doesn't have the same kind of visceral necessity in my mind that it did maybe 10 years ago or something like that. Like, I think to myself, when I read articles by people saying, this is why we don't need a revolution, or this is why we don't need these kind of changes because we'll just win it through this way, or, different things like that. When I'm reading it, I kind of go, oh, well, they haven't thought of this, or that's going to be a problem, or that's going to be a problem. But it's almost like, I don't know. It's hard because I don't want to make it like an arrogant thing where I'm like, oh, these, tut tut, these people haven't thought of this. That's so funny, but I don't care. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just, it ends up being kind of like, well, it's almost like, okay, if you want this kind of certain economic policy, these are the
Right.
things you're going to have to do, but you're not willing to do that. So
Yeah.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's what it ends up it ends up being kind of like that, where I'm kind of like, well, I don't know what I'm actually, or things like saying, kind of the opposite of it when it ends up being, anytime it's kind of construed as an emergency situation or something that you're supposed to dedicate yourself to 100%. I'm like, well, no, that's just not how life works. It might be if if you're in kind of an extreme situation, but even then, I don't think that's true a lot of times, even in the extreme situation, because if you read about people under war and things like that, it tends to be a very small number of people at the start who, or like during that actually are doing, like combat or something like that, or like in an extreme kind of situation. Most of the time, you're just trying to do things like, stock up food, or you know what I mean. Like it's not like even people who are in extreme situations, most of the time are just surviving. It's not like, everyone has to be some sort of like extreme fighter for the cause at all times.
That's a little bit of like a movie kind of idea about how things work. It's just like, it's just not realistic, I guess. I mean, not that I would know, but it just doesn't. I know that for myself to think about things in those ways definitely just triggers certain kinds of like, oh, that's exciting. Oh, that seems like righteous. That seems like that would, I don't really, I don't have the desire that I think some people do to like be the hero or whatever, but I can definitely see that also being part of those kinds of fantasies and stuff.
Yeah, and I don't know, like especially even one of the ways that I would think through goals for the future or something like that when I was doing not as well, is I would think like, well, maybe I could like give money to this cause if I had a full-time job, or you know what I mean? Like I would kind of sort of like think of ways that I would be benefiting other people by benefiting myself, kind of thing, And I'm trying to like, so that I wasn't just thinking in terms of narrow self-interest, because I felt like that wasn't going to be the thing that made the difference for me. And then as I've like I would say, slowly getting a little bit better, I really a lot of that has kind of fallen away, where I don't have the same kind of urge to transform everything around me and kind of fix everything and stuff like that. It's much more, I don't know, maybe it's getting older too. I think that's just part of it, but like it's much more kind of, okay, I have my place to do my part, but it's just going to be a small kind of thing. And, the world's billions of people, you're not going to, totally kind of remake the entire world yourself. So you got to be reasonable about it. And then as soon as you start doing that, I think you kind of go pretty far down the road. Like you kind of go, okay, well, it's time for me to kind of, so I start to think now in terms of, even just kind of like, oh, okay, once I'm living in a city, maybe I'll volunteer on a board or something like that kind of thing. I don't think in terms of, maxing out donations or something like that.
I think that's, in a way, it's almost like more loyal to the idea of like class, a class view of history instead of like the great man view of history, because you're just thinking of yourself as like one particle in a very, very large system that you don't have that just any individual doesn't have that much control over it, let alone someone who's not especially powerful in the system, so you do what you can, and that's what you can do. That's it. You can't like just jump out of that position, of course there are like extraordinary people that do make things happen in a really kind of like radical and almost like magical kind of way, but that's a lot of luck as well. Of course, these are great people, but there's also a lot of luck involved. There's also a lot of just the circumstances lining up for them, like so that it was going to be anybody in that position, so a lot of it's just out of your hands. And I think your best bet really is to just try to short-term and long-term make yourself a better person that is just going to kind of like exude positive change in the world. If something happens so that you have an opportunity to like make serious changes, then of course go for it. But I think just pretending like that's already the case is not productive. Trying to force it.
Yeah, it's I think it's strange too, though, how that kind of like we do have that experience of people who can make decisive changes for at least like sections of society or something like that, or like parts of it. And so it's hard to kind of shake that sometimes, you know, especially when you're kind of like I find that even like say in my own situation where um, you know, I've started writing a bit and have like an online presence and stuff like that. So I'm at like the lowest rung of that probably, you know, like in terms of like writing and stuff like that. But I find already that a lot of people will message me asking questions about something, or you know, they give us our curious cat or something like that, you know, and they just constantly are asking, you know, me about like different things about what they should be doing and that kind of thing. And so I think that that can very quickly go to someone's head too, where if they have some sort of minor position in society or something like that, where you know they might be like if they're like a TV host or something like that kind of thing, where they're expected to kind of like model for large numbers of people like something, and it's very strange that it seems to happen even at like the lowest levels. Um, and I think that that's part of why um, people do very quickly, and I think it does have a conservative kind of, or at least like um, it has a certain kind of I don't know if the word is conservative, but it's something where it influences people to feel like they have to take a position on everything, and that it has to be jive with the consensus in their social circle and stuff, and becomes obvious and um, criticized if it's not done. And it's very kind of strange that kind of, it's very kind of, that's something I didn't realize like 5 years ago or something like that, that I do realize now is how there is this kind of like internal like culture to just, you know, like the cultural scene or something like that, where people are very like, there's some people who are very like hyper aware of how everyone is positioned. And you know, there's people that matter and there's people that don't, and there's people that, you know, it's very strange. And I think that a lot of politics like is like that, just like the scene and stuff where they know, they kind of all know each other, like the ruling class kind of people. And so I think I think if you kind of buy into that kind of worldview, and you kind of like your kind of like position in society is somehow determined by that, like if you like say have a job working for a political candidate, or you work for a magazine or something like that, it really is strange how it can kind of change your whole worldview to um, kind of like if you don't keep up with that, you're going to fall apart really quickly in terms of, you know, the eyes of other people. Because yeah, so I don't know, I find it bizarre, but it's very, it exists. It's weird.
I definitely do think that it exists, and it kind of, I don't know, I feel like that reinforces my point of like you should try to become a good person, like someone with integrity, someone who is able to uphold good values and like stand by them when things get tough or when you're tempted away from them or whatever. Because that will make you able, if you do get into any kind of position of influence, you'll be able to use that for good, and you won't be like, you know, perverted by it. I mean, these are very, I don't know if they're trite, but they're not I'm not, you know, blowing anyone's mind here, but I do think that that's like, that's just kind of how the way I see it, I guess.
Yeah. No, and it's funny because it's the kind of thing that if we had said this to ourselves maybe like 10 years ago, it would have been hard for us to hear, I think.
I don't know what I would have called myself. Maybe I would have said like I'm being an idealist, or that I'm counter-revolutionary and like advocating individualist ideologies or something like that. I don't know what I would say. Something stupid, probably.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. And it's funny that, you know, how we've tried to avoid this on the show, but it just ends up kind of resolving down all these kind of like debates, where a lot of it is just who's friends with who and stuff like that, and kind of these kind of networks of friends that kind of sort of evolve into positions that it like I find that what it is that people kind of sort of like congregate around positions where they can kind of take like a slam dunk view against something. You know what I mean? Like they can kind of go like, this is obviously wrong or something like that kind of thing. And I think you see that with a lot of social issues. I think that's like the core of it a lot of the time, is that they take something that seems obviously wrong for them, and then they kind of know that within their friend group they can go all the way with it because they won't be called out on it, or they won't really have to debate it because it's just kind of, it's their way that they exist. So and I find that that's like, it's kind of funny because in advertising culture, obviously they do that. You know, like that's just how they operate, is that they don't really usually deal with political stuff, but they just do things that seem obvious to the people who want the product or something like that. You know, it's not like, but it's the same kind of signaling. It's very strange.
It's, I guess it's kind of like, I don't know if it's the same thing as commodity fetishism. That's probably not what this is, but I think what happens is like you get a kind of social hierarchy that starts to build around a certain, either a idea or even just like a rhetorical position, and so people want to compete to kind of be at the top of that hierarchy, and in order to do that, you sort of present yourself as like the best representative of that idea or of that position. So you know, people kind of just keep ramping it up and ramping it up. And I think you're right that that's the same way that advertising basically works. Is like that a product starts to, it stands in for something like that, right? Like it stands in for like sex appeal. It stands in for like success and status or something. And so people try to acquire that thing so they can kind of get up on the social hierarchy that's attached to that.
Yeah. And I think that when the strangest thing about that too is how that's something else that kind of, I think Twitter taught me, was like this sociology of this kind of stuff, where even just the ideas, or, you know, politics and where, like, say if, you know, like if you told an Amazon employee, like one of the marketing people, whatever, maybe 20 facts about yourself that you thought were mundane or something like that. And some of them kind of maybe hinted a bit at politics, but not really. Maybe it was just like movies you like, books you've read, or something like that. They really could probably spit back, you know, high percentage chances of like hundreds of other things that you like or something, you know, or that you would like or something. And I find that strange, but it's true that like you see people online and you can usually, you know, if you know maybe 10 things about them, you can maybe guess 90 other things about them or something like that. It's very strange, you know, like it's very, so I think that's, but realizing that has also kind of, I think, calmed me down a bit about that kind of stuff, about political kind of stuff, because you're like, well, you know, I really am a type in those ways, you know.
You know, I've also learned from that is that I can find people who are like past versions of myself. Like I can see, oh, that was me in 2002. Oh, that was me in 2005. That was me in 2008. You know, so I think everyone has that, right? Like people change, like people evolve and stuff.
Sure.
Or even regress. And you know, I think that that's a good thing. I think it's like, it would be horrible if people were just sort of born a certain type and you just had certain preferences and ideas. You know, that would be that would be crazy. But it's cool to see that, really. Like it can be a little shocking to be like, wow, that really is just like what I was thinking back then. But you know, that person, there's good in that too, right? Like it's not just because my thinking has changed on certain things, it doesn't mean that I think that those ideas or those attitudes that I had are bad. I just don't think that I just think a little bit differently about things now, you know? So.
Yeah, and I've been kind of thinking about that whole like process of sort of like the development of personality through adulthood or something like that, and ways that I could kind of I don't know, like push that along maybe or something like that myself. Do you know what I mean? Like instead of just kind of looking at it backwards and saying that's how I've kind of matured a bit over time. Like how do I, look at things and say where am I gonna where would I might be from
That's
5
a
years
good
from now
good
if I kind
attitude.
of
Yeah, what have
it's
you
hard to
been
do.
thinking about along those lines? Anything specifically?
I think part of it is I mean it's kind of tied up with mental health, but it's kind of I kind of think well um choose like sort of like choose the higher good when I can. Like say if I like I generally see every movie that comes out that's like a big kind of blockbuster kind of thing or something like that, and I spend very little time watching the kind of movies that I tend to actually prefer at the end of the day, like that are like, just better made movies or something like that kind of thing. And so I'm kind of like, well, try when I can to kind of say, well, okay, I'm kind of in a good mood today and I don't really need to just kind of indulge myself kind of thing. I can just maybe watch something a bit better or something like that kind of thing. That kind of attitude of just trying to like sort of nudge myself towards um I don't know, like doing something better with my time than I would have kind of done if I was kind of feeling like just tired and I wanted to do something whatever kind of thing.
Okay,
So, yeah.
that sounds good.
Um
I tend to think about these things a
I don't
lot
know, but
in
like
terms of
yeah.
like financial stuff, which isn't exactly,
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
maybe that's not exactly what I should be thinking about, or at least exclusively in those terms. I should probably be thinking about how do I want to become better as a person and stuff. I guess I do that in religious terms. Like I sort of think about like, okay, these are the things that I need to work on. These are the practices that I want to get better with. And then I think as well as like, okay, I need to make this much more money. I need to save this much more. I need to cut these kind of costs and that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, it was funny because I was actually going to say that today. We already talked about personal finance on an episode, but I actually had been thinking about that a fair bit today. Just before we recorded, I was making a spreadsheet and kind of planning out over the next year different savings and stuff like that, and trying to actually kind of plan ahead of time, maybe because this is the first time really in my life that I've tried to budget out over a year, kind of thing, and actually like maybe stick to it. Because one of the things is I was thinking is that I have um, uh, like I kind of have a predictable sort of like base
Mm-hmm.
level income over the next year, and I know I'm probably going to be at home or for a bit at least because I'm not earning enough to actually for like a good place or something like that. But and I've started to kind of earn a bit of money here and there from different things, and um, so I was thinking, well, instead of just putting one-off amounts of money into a savings account as I've been doing, kind of like planning that out a bit more for a target, and then money that I earn on top of that, I can actually use for things maybe like going on trips and different things, or like buying different things that I want. And so, anyways, I was planning out all the different sort of details of that, and it's encouraging in that way, to actually look at like a year ahead of time and go, oh, I would have enough for a down payment on an apartment or whatever, like first and last for an apartment by that time, or
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So
Yeah, definitely. Where does the Naxalite Rebellion fit into your budget?
yeah. It's funny. It sounds like a silly thing to say, but I actually am glad that I haven't had any problems at the border coming to the United States after all the dumb posts I made. I don't know because I've heard so many people, even people that we know, getting into trouble, getting just stopped at the border, especially journalists we know, like asked all these different questions and stuff, and just because in something in their computer told them to or something, like to bother them or something, and I don't know. I'm lucky. I feel lucky that I made enough posts about the troops, but didn't, end up triggering anything like that. Because
Yeah, I mean, I guess being banned all the time
yeah,
helps, right?
yeah. So
I always think about that. Like, my Twitter accounts keep getting like suspended, and that just means all those tweets are gone, so people can't look anything up
yeah.
on me.
I deleted them deleted most of my stuff about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, because I don't know. It doesn't seem good to. I might even delete some of my old, because like, I don't know. Yeah, it is weird to think that like 30 years from now they'll be there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess like if Twitter still
I know
exists,
what
I
you
don't
mean,
know.
but yeah, like it's just.
But yeah, there's just no benefit,
Yeah.
right? Like there's no benefit whatsoever to keeping that around. It's only a liability.
Yeah. So actually, that is something that I think, in terms of long-term planning, will be kind of strange to think that. Yeah, I don't know. Like, how long do these kind of personalities follow us, or something like that? You know, like I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't think that I would still be. I don't know. I never really thought about it too much, but I've been online, just posting stupid shit for like 17
Yeah,
years
yeah, yeah.
basically. And when I was 15, I didn't think of it as anything except like, I don't know, just like dumb stuff that kids do, and I'm still doing
Yeah.
it. So.
Yep. So that's funny. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess it's about time to get into the questions, huh? Alrighty. So, have you guys had any experience with ADHD? I was diagnosed as a kid, but haven't had meds since high school, and now I'm thinking about getting some again. Has that ever come up for you with all your mental health stuff?
You know what's funny is that someone suggested that to me. I think maybe about a year ago or something like that. That they said that, they just said that I had a lot of the symptoms of it, and I ended up reading a book about it this year. That was just kind of like different ways you can kind of manage your symptoms and stuff like that. And it was like a pulpy kind of, book by a doctor, kind of, written kind of like a. I don't know if you've read many of these mental health books, but they're kind of, like.
No, not
Okay.
really.
So, anyways, a lot of them are kind of like, wow, you're different, but here's the benefit of that, or something like that kind of thing. Anyway, so, and it's kind of like, I talked to this guy from, Minnesota, and it turned out that, it just kind of like, kind of like in this kind of self-help kind of, I don't know, style. It's a very unique style. If you've read these kind of books, they're very, I don't know. But anyways, the book was quite helpful though, just because I think it's caused by other things for me. I think it's caused by like OCD kind of symptoms and stuff. I don't think it's like actually ADHD, whatever. It's just like a symptom that I have, but I really do notice that. And at a certain point, it was just like impossible to do things. Like I just couldn't focus at all. I couldn't, almost anything. Like I couldn't cook. I couldn't clean. I couldn't do anything like that, for a few years. But, it's gotten a lot better, but I still notice that, where it's like, yeah, like I only have so much kind of focus and energy during the day usually, and kind of have to spend it at certain times doing certain things. And then, for the rest of the time, I feel like it's very, very difficult for me to do anything. And I kind of have to just kind of parcel it out. And, so that's what, yeah, I mean, it's been really good to be able to kind of like identify that kind of thing, because, I feel if you kind of like realize it's a symptom of something, it's easier to not feel bad about it in that way. Where, I mean, when it first started happening, I was like, oh, okay, this is just not going to ever get better. And, I'm just not going to be able to do, like, what I mean? I would just be basically like a zombie or something like that, I thought. And so that was not good. But like, and I felt distressed about it. I was like, why can't I do anything? What's going on? And, but I'm kind of at a point now where it's like, yeah, like it's just, I'm just like, oh yeah, that's just the way it is. And I feel like it's usually kind of like, if I feel like I had to explain it to most people that wouldn't kind of get it, they'd just be like, yeah, well, it's kind of odd or something like that. They wouldn't really kind of see that it's like a actual complex of things kind of thing. But like, it's gotten to the point where, because I can kind of realize that it's symptomatic, I can kind of use the windows where I have a bit more energy or focus or something like that, and actually get little bit done. Now it's a very small amount of time in a given week. Usually, that's what it ends up being. But like, it's enough that I can work on articles for things and kind of, do the podcast and that kind of stuff. But otherwise, then it just ends up being kind of like annoying. But yeah, I mean, it's funny, but this is going to sound even funnier, but I was reading a bit about sort of like mild autistic kind of stuff. And because a lot of the same sort of symptoms as those kind of like attention ones in some ways. It's funny because as I embraced that over the last few months, kind of being like, okay, I have these kind of symptoms. I realized how like ashamed I was at some level of some of these different things, like just as like different kind of like little obsessions I had or something like that, little kind of like things. And it's actually made it feel like, I feel a lot better about some of them. Like I feel like a lot better about, I don't know, like different things about OCD kind of behaviors or something like that. Like I feel a lot, I don't know, like I've resolved in my mind that I'm just going to have them and that's fine. So we'll just kind of embrace them in some ways, kind of thing. Like certain things about checking things about the news and different like things. So yeah. Anyways, that was my spiel to that.
Does that give you any control over them to have this sort of attitude towards it, or is it, or you kind of like resigned to it, but that makes you feel better?
Oh no, it feels like I'm gaining more control over it. But
okay,
yeah,
that's great.
No, so it's good. It's just that, I mean, that's why I wouldn't have been able to go to school if things had not improved in that regard. Like it really is improved in that way, kind of thing. But it's more kind of now. I did it to a point where I was kind of like pushing myself in a grueling way for a year, kind of thing, in the master's kind of thing. Like it would hurt, kind of thing, to like just every day kind of have to be out of the house for the whole day and just be really working on things and stuff and feeling really anxious about it. But now I'm trying to figure out a way how to do it in kind of like a more happy medium kind of way, like pushing myself at certain key points, but then otherwise trying to relax a bit, because it's not worth it. It's not worth just, driving yourself crazy to achieve kind of like, things that you could just achieve over a longer period of time or something. So, yeah.
Yeah, I remember trying to force myself to, like when I was really anxious and stuff. I remember like not allowing myself to indulge isn't the right word, but I wouldn't give myself any space to like take care of that. I would just be like, too bad, you're gonna do it anyways, kind of a thing. And that was hard.
Yeah.
But and it wasn't as, I don't think, as extreme as like what you got going on. But I think now looking back on it, it sort of made me develop like I almost like to be in situations like that now. Like I don't really get anxiety like that anymore, but when something difficult for me appears, like I want to go do it. Like I have a real like zeal to go tackle it, because I think I really gained a lot from going through those experiences. Like it made me a lot tougher mentally. I think it's a big part about why that kind of stuff just faded away.
Yeah.
Is just sort of like boot camping my way through it.
So, yeah. And I mean, even today, just as an example, like I had said to you that I got like a blood test today. I'm supposed to get them every 6 months, and the last time I did it was probably like, I don't know, 2 years ago or something like that. And so like when I, like as just the experience of it is that like I have to go and it feels like, just I have a panic attack while I'm there, and just where it's just, like it just pain and kind of like, dizzy and all this kind of stuff. And then, but because it took me that long to do it. And then, once I did it, I was like, okay, well, that happened, kind of thing. I got it done. And and after that, I was fine. Kind of, I mean, not, it's strange. It's like, okay, I had to do that. I got it done. Now, I had lunch, and then, after that, because of all the stress in my mind, kind of thing, I had a bad headache, and I lied down for maybe like 3 hours or 4 hours or something like that, just to and as I'm sleeping, I'm having like almost like a nightmare kind of thing. Like it's I start to sweat a lot and start to kind of get it out of my body and things like that, and because it's just so tense from the panic and stuff. And then when I wake up, I have a bit of a headache, and I kind of mope around for a bit or something like that. But then, and then I just start to get better after that. You know what I mean? I start to feel fine. And so it's kind of very, it's kind of like a whole extreme kind of process. But the way I look at it now is just kind of like, oh, I had to go get that thing done. I did it. I had the bad period. Now it's time, I can do whatever I want, kind of thing, or something like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, man.
That's but it is, it's way better to look at it that way than not do anything, So, yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's good for you, man.
Yeah.
Put up with that. I don't know. I would be doing as well as you. Well, let's go on to the next question here. Have either of you done a religious pilgrimage? Have you done anything like that?
Nope. Not really. I mean, I did go to Montreal a few weeks ago, and while I was to Notre Dame Basilica and stuff, I went around and walked around some of the different religious sites and stuff like that. But no, I mean, it's obviously quite huge in the Catholic religion, but I just haven't had the money really.
Is there anything in Canada that sort of counts for that?
Yeah, I mean, the Basilica, I think itself does count in some ways, but
oh yeah, okay.
There are a lot of different like abbeys and kind of stuff, like all different like shrines and things like that all over Quebec, mostly because Quebec was like the Catholic province kind of thing. Most of the rest of Canada was Protestant mostly. So I think there's a lot of different shrines and stuff in Quebec, but you got to think that they only really settled there, 400 years ago or something like that kind of thing, right? So like,
right.
It's not the kind of like, it was after the point where a lot of these kind of shrines and stuff got established. So it existed, but it's not like the same as kind of like, I think where you would see it more is like Mexico or something like that kind of thing. You would have that kind of thing, or like other parts of Latin America, and then but a lot of people just go all the way to the Vatican or something, like they go all the way to France or Italy or something to go for stuff like that. Yeah. Or like to Israel. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Have you done like, sorry, not have you done, but is there a formal pilgrimage type thing in Catholicism? Like obviously in Islam there's Hajj.
No, there's I don't think there's anything required at all. It's kind of like I mean, it really in reality, it tends to be associated with like illness or old age, where you see people, or like people kind of, historically it was people, usually a lot of the time it was overcoming something, like they might have committed some grave sin or something like that, and then they kind of said, well, to show that I mean it, I'm not going to go to like the distant shrine or something like that, and for that saint or something like that, or and then I think in the last 100 years, especially the last 50 years, it's become a lot more like older tour groups, or people that have some sort of illness that are trying to kind of get intervention in some way or something. And then but I know a lot of people that I kind of more, again, it's like a tour group kind of thing, and depending, or people that like actually become priests or something like that, maybe. But like that's at least the number one way that I encounter it as like an individual. I see it that kind of way, is that people will be signing up for these different things and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it exists, and then I think it exists more within like certain local cultures. Like within Mexico, there's huge kind of pilgrimage kind of culture of looking,
Yeah, that's sort of my impression, is that like local cultures will have their own sort of, like either it was like a really pious person at one point, like a saint or a saintly person or something like that.
The most famous one nowadays is like Lourdes, like the people that go there to try to get healed in France. And then I don't know, that's like the one that is like I don't know, it used to be like a joke in the 80s a lot, I guess, kind of thing, like just constantly people would make fun of that and stuff. So
yeah, you should try it out with your mental health.
Yeah. No, but people do that, people try. And,
sure.
So I mean, and you've never done the Hajj, obviously, but it's something that
No, I haven't done the Hajj. I have been to Jerusalem, which I didn't really do it as like a religious pilgrimage or anything, but I did really enjoy my time there. It's really one of my favorite places I've ever been to. It's hard to put my finger on exactly why that is. It's just a very cool feeling to be there, and it's not something I anticipated. Like going there was just like, okay, yeah, I'm in the area, I'll check it out. And it's just I don't know, it's really hard to explain, but there's a lot of what I can put my finger on is that I really loved the variety of religious expression, and just there's like, I think probably every kind of like Jewish, Christian, and Muslim variety on display there, and you'll just come across it just wandering around. That's cool. Like each corner you'll find something new. It's like Ethiopian Christians over there, and then it's it's some people from, looks like Spain or something, like marching through the street with like a guy in front like playing the guitar, singing a song or something. It's just like really, really wild. Like that's, never seen anything like that before.
So you're required, I guess, to do the Hajj once in your life. Is it like more, or?
Yeah, if I can manage it, like if I can afford it and whatnot. It's interesting because historically most Muslims have not done the Hajj. It's a lot easier now than it ever has been before. Mm-hmm. So there's entire communities like in Southeast Asia where I don't think anyone made Hajj for hundreds of years, or if it was just like the certain sultans and stuff like that, like emirs, like just certain powerful individuals would do it, and that would become a huge epic story that people would talk about all the time, about like, oh, he went on Hajj and this was what happened to him, and so it's really interesting. I'd like to do it. Mm-hmm. I've watched videos of people doing it. I've talked to people who've done it, and they all said it was really amazing.
Sure.
So it'd be cool to do.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, I'm sure that would kind of have the similar sort of thing of that kind of like global variety of just everybody showing up. Yeah. That I really like appreciate that a lot about Jerusalem. So I imagine Hajj is very similar.
A friend of ours was describing his process to us, and it sounded like a anxiety nightmare to me, a lot of it. But
yeah, I bet I was. Yeah, I mean, for me, I bet it would be pretty bad. So, just like you hear about the stampedes and the trampling and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that is honestly, that's a rarity, but it's a possibility. Sure. It is a reality as well. So. But I would like to do it someday. It doesn't cost a huge amount of money, from what I understand. It's like a few $1,000s to kind of get on a organized trip with some people. So it's not like totally out of the realm of possibility. Sure. But don't quite have it in the budget yet.
Well, I don't know.
So good time to remind people to hit us up on the Patreon. Give me that Hajj money.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the best pizza you've ever had? Well, first thing that comes to mind for myself is the pizza that I had in Rome in the restaurant. I mean, we talked about it on the premium episode about Italy there, but um, yeah, there was this restaurant that we used to go to on a hill. It was just outside the city, and it was such like a stereotypically Italian restaurant. And I don't think they were playing anything up. Like it was just like that's what it was. And the pizza was just
Yeah.
awesome. Um, super crispy. All the ingredients are just really fresh, like everything in Italian food. Like I think a big reason why it's good is just that the ingredients are good.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely my number one.
Yeah, I would say I remember one day in Montreal, my family was visiting for my birthday, and we kind of walked around, and I kind of was like, well, this place looks good, kind of thing, and it was like a thin crust. I had a bunch of like different meats on it and stuff, and just I don't know, it was like perfect. And it was kind of funny because the hostess, whatever, didn't server didn't speak English at all. So we were trying to, but she also was kind of like, I think, new, so she didn't know yet how to do kind of like navigate people that didn't speak French. And my parents were not very kind of like accommodating kind of thing for that kind of thing. I don't know, like, so I was trying to like
Right.
come up with the words for things in French, and I realized at a certain point that I was getting a little too like animated about it, kind of thing. I was just being silly. Like I started, like, my dad wanted like whole wheat crust, so I started like saying like blé, 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 which is like, it means like wheat, but like I guess like, like, yeah, like, just I think it just means like grain kind of thing. You know what I mean? Kind of thing, like wheat. So I was like going like blé, blé or something. I don't know. That was funny in retrospect. I was like, oh yeah, like she had no idea what was going on. She was like, what are you talking about? Kind of, basically like in French. And I was like, yeah, that probably didn't make sense. Oh well. Yeah. So yeah. Anyways, it was good pizza though. Montreal has a lot of that kind of like good thin crust kind of pizza. I don't know.
Cool. What do you like to order on your pizzas usually?
Well, if I'm just getting at like a cheap place or something like that, like pepperoni, bacon, and Italian sausage. So a lot of haram meat or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I've lately been liking just really basic stuff.
Yeah.
I usually just go for something vegetarian, honestly.
Yeah.
A lot of times I can't get the meat anyways.
Sure.
So just go for something veggie and or something, even just like cheese pizza. I'm happy with that. Because I don't know, for me what I like about pizza is just it's like something super cheesy, and I don't eat a lot of cheese anymore. With Tabs, she's trying to cut back on like saturated fats and cholesterol, so I'm sort of like tagging along with that, and which I'm doing that voluntarily. Yeah. It's just a good idea, right? So, when I do get to eat pizza, that's like a big splurge for me. So it's like the cheese is like the most exciting thing about that. All the meat or whatever is like, I can get that on other things.
Yeah.
So let's see here. This person asks, Don, what's your favorite church? And Tom, what's your favorite mosque?
Well, I mean, as I said, I just went to that Notre Dame Basilica in Montreal, and it's pretty crazy. Like, it's all like intricate wood. Took like a huge amount of time to kind of put together, and kind of like, it's like, I don't know, it's crazy beautiful. So I have to kind of default towards that. Although I also went to one in Toronto, which I think is called St. Mark's or something like that, and it was quite beautiful too. I don't know. So okay. I mean, I don't know any other ones really like around the world or something like that as much. So yeah.
Yeah, I haven't actually really been to a huge number of mosques. There's a few around me, actually, like in my neighborhood there's several, but I've just been going to one of the bigger ones, and it's cool, it's fine, I have no issue with it, really. There was one in Florida that was kind of interesting, just architecturally, that I went to. One that I have not been to personally, but I think looks really amazing and I would love to go to is the one that was recently built at the Cambridge Muslim College
Hmm.
in the UK. They call it an eco mosque. It's 100% like energy self-sufficient. Like it doesn't require any energy or something like that. Something
That's
like
cool.
that. And I really like the interior design of it. It has these really interesting pillars that at the ceiling. It's really hard to describe this, but they have like really natural kind of like arches that support the ceiling, and there's like a skylight that comes through it. Uh, the carpeting is really a lot of times mosques have very busy carpeting
Hmm.
in terms of the designs and stuff, and not only is that not what the prophet recommended, but it's also distracting. And I think that's actually why he didn't suggest that you would have something that's just,
Yeah.
busy and distracting to pray on. So they just have like a really plain carpeting with lines just to kind of help you line up for prayer and stuff. I just really like the design of it. It looks really cool. I love the idea of it being like an eco mosque. I think that's an awesome idea to kind of have something that is like environmentally, like it's just integrated into the environment in like a sort of naturalistic way. So it's just something that can exist in the world, and it isn't like just another building with like a dome on top.
That's cool. Yeah, I'll have to look this up when we're done. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some really nice videos you can find on YouTube.
Cool.
Um, one that I have been to that I at the time uh I was just like too shy and too I don't know if I don't know if I would say I was in awe of it, but I just didn't feel like somehow it was appropriate for me to even go into it. But when I was in Jerusalem, I went to the Dome of the
Oh yeah.
Rock, and I didn't enter into it, but I was like there, and it's a beautiful building for sure. And I probably should have just gone in and prayed anyways, but I don't know, something just didn't seem
Yeah.
right, so I just didn't do it.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, but I'm not really sure. I think about that every once in a while, like, man, what was that held me
Sure.
back? But was it the right thing to do? I don't know, but it is what it is,
Hmm.
right? So yeah, I guess that's my answer for that. A question for me, Tom. Have you listened to Yasser Qadi, and do you like him? Yeah, I listen to Yasser Qadi all the time. I think uh he's great. I'm really glad the way that he's evolved over time. Um, are you familiar with Yasser
No.
Qadi, Donald? So he is an American um imam, a sheikh. He's of Desi background, but he's American. He's like a first
Hmm.
generation. And when he was younger, he was on more of like a Salafi kind of bent. But he has always been very like intellectual and like academic about the way he approaches things. He does, he's really done his research on stuff, and he kind of thinks about things very fairly and very like I don't know. He's just like a smart
Hmm.
guy. Um, and as he's gotten older, he's distanced himself from the Salafi movement and become more mainstream, mainstream Sunni. I think that he is pretty much like a mainstream Sunni at this point. I'm not sure. I would have to kind of look at into that a little bit,
Hmm.
but uh, yeah, he's just like a good-hearted dude and a really smart guy, and I think that it's always worth listening to what he has to say. Anytime he gives a talk or a khutbah or something, it's just jam-packed with information, and he's just reasonable about the way he approaches things. He's always kind of got a good balance of this is what we of like tradition and like adapting to modern circumstances and like how to approach difference of opinion and interfaith stuff and just in general he's a really like well-rounded guy. So yeah, thumbs up for Yasser
That's cool.
Qadi. Okay. Let's end it on this one. Have you guys ever been paintballing?
No, I haven't. No.
I think I have. I can't even, I don't have any memories of it, but I just have like the idea that I have. I know I've done laser tag. There was a place in Italy I think we went to a couple times that had laser tag.
I was very bad at it. I think I only did it once, but yeah. The laser tag.
Yeah, I wasn't very good at the laser tag. You know what? I don't think I've like been paintballing, but I think someone had a paint gun, like a paintball gun.
Yeah.
And I think we were just shooting that around in the woods or something like that.
Yeah. A friend of mine used to do like airsoft a lot. I think he still might do it, but yeah, you know what that is, or?
Yeah, is that BBs?
Yeah, it's basically BBs, yeah, but it's like the guns look like real guns generally. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And they kind of camp out overnight, all that kind of stuff too. So they like do.
Yeah, that stuff seems fun, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know.
I like my shooty games on the computer. That sort of gets that out of my system,
Sure.
I think.
I actually, yeah. I think it would just infuriate me because it's like very, very, I don't know, difficult. Like I think that's one of the things that is why I kind of have one of the things that is just always kind of shocks me about war and stuff like that is this idea that like you spend all this time preparing and then like everything's over in 2 seconds sometimes, you know what I mean? Like, you know, like, I don't know. I feel like I would be that person a lot of the time. So I don't know. Yeah, like, I don't know. I always think of stuff like people, I don't know. I always have this kind of one moment in my mind, which is kind of like the archetypical moment, I guess, or something like that. But like, it's like someone landing on a beach on D-Day. And it's like that person, you know, went through all that training for all that time, you know, for like months and months. And maybe they were in other theaters of the war and all that kind of stuff. And then they get shot as they're going on the beach or something like that. I'm like, oh man, that's annoying. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's funny.
War is really dumb.
Yep. So
that's our closing message here. Okay. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. You can catch us on Twitter at You Can't Win Pod. If you are a patron, you can hop on the Discord and submit questions there. Otherwise, you can send them to the Curious Cat. And yeah, thanks for listening. Catch you next time.
The only good cop is a dead cop. Police brutality must come to a stop. Them kill Latino, then kill more blacks. Louima in Brooklyn, they all in the Bronx. We spark rebellion, watch them get romped. Self-defense is not a violent act. Police murder, one up, got a fact. Giuliani, send them troops to attack. Them soon retreat, watch them run back. Cop shot, cop shot, cop shot. Cop shot, cop shot, cop shot. These ghetto eyes of mine ain't blind no more. I'm getting ready for guerrilla war. Cause it's coming. Y2K computer glitch start running. If you the snitch, you could catch 2 in your shit. I never sell out. Let every nigga in a sellout. I don't hate players, I hate the mayors. And the police commissioners, governors and senators. Turning my people into junkies and prisoners. I rock for the folk that's locked to break that lock. It feel good when I hear Jake got shot. We can take this block if you really want it. Been pulling people army if you really on it. I done seen enough shit to turn your heart cold. Life is like walking barefoot on hot coals. It's a government policy. No justice, no democracy. This a modern day slavery. Fire burn old country. Cop shot, cop shot.